And we're live. I gotta quit dancing. All right.
Mhm.
Well, welcome to our June episode of our Merck live video series. This is the Mobile Internet Resource Center that you have joined in, and I am one of the co-founders of the Mobile Internet Resource Center. We did this started back in 2014, so we've been doing this nearly a decade. And my partner, co-founder, is behind the screen over there. There's his hand, doing the producing for this. Chris and I have been full-time tech nomads since 2006. That is 18 years working remotely using mobile internet. And we got asked the question about how we got connected to do our remote work so often that we made this our job. And we currently travel by a fleet of vehicles. We have an RV, a van, and a boat that we split our year between. And we are full-time remote on the road all the time. But I am joined this afternoon to cover this topic of part-time mobile internet solutions with two of our teammates here at Merck who are now, used to be full-time RVers, but are now part-time RVers. So first is Jen. She has been with our team since 2017, but we originally met her on the road when we were all full-timers way back in 2013. So go ahead and take it, Jen. Tell folks a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so my husband and I were full time for about 5 years from 2013 to 18, and then we decided to come off the road, and we are in Asheville, North Carolina now, and we traded in our big RV for a van, and so now we just do short trips. Actually, we've been doing very short trips. We were kind of grounded for a while due to an elderly dog, but we have a longer trip planned for later this year. So yeah, we've just been kind of taking little weekend or week long trips so far. But hopefully we'll be out on the road for about 6 weeks later this year.
Yes, so she'll be navigating working remotely off of a part-time RVer's mobile internet setup because she's got to work
Mhm.
remotely to help us out. And then Suzy, you might recognize the last name of McNabb. Andy McNabb, her husband, is one of our key contributors here at the Mobile Internet Resource Center. He's been with our team since 2017, and you guys basically joined our premium membership back then when you were getting ready to hit the road after you both retired from the being in the service. So go ahead and Suzy joined our team about 2 years ago. You don't see her on camera much, but behind the scenes, she's our cat herder. She keeps our team in line, being our project manager, because we have a lot of content that we have to cover here, and she helps us make sure we're doing it all. But go ahead and give a little bit about your story, Suzy.
All right. Well, we used to have a small class C that we traveled when the kids were little, and it would just be weekend trips. And then we thought, when I retire, I am going to travel full time. We're going to drag them around, and they're going to love it. Of course, they will. We actually lived in the RV for a total of a year and a half. It was a big Class A motorhome, and then the oldest daughter wanted to move. We have three kids, by the way. And the oldest daughter is like, I want real high school. I want to go. I want to be in the home. And so we switched to part timing, and we kept the big RV for a while. But now we're in a Class C, and so we have kind of a different challenge than the usual because we have to think about who's coming along on each trip since we have teenagers now and what do they want to do, and so it's an ever evolving problem, but we still love travel, and traveling and seeing new places is really important to
Right,
the
and
whole
both of
family.
you are now working part time with Mark when you're doing your traveling. So you've
Oh
got
yeah.
to have a mobile internet set up, and you guys, I mean, you got a little bit of an advantage is you're usually testing gear for us too when you're out there.
We are. So, like, there are some elements of our setup that are like it's on rotation. What are you testing right now? But there's some things that you always plan for, or you always think about bringing along. And Yeah, that. So we've done long trips. We spent about 6 weeks away from home last summer, and we've got another short trip coming up this weekend, followed by another one for Fourth of July. So, I mean, we do a little bit of everything, and so
Yeah, and you
and the
guys
needs are
just
different
came off
each
three
time.
weeks gallivanting around Europe, so you've got a different perspective there, which we'll probably do a future live going over international travels based upon your and Andy's experience with that. So All right, let's go ahead and cut into it's why are we doing this? What is so different about part-time travel than full-time? I mean, on the cursory level, you think, oh, well, if you're only part-time traveling, it should be easier. You don't need as much mobile internet if you're a full-timer. And that might be true. A full-time RVer, however, when they're setting up for their mobile internet setup, they're gonna be looking for maybe a long-term solution, and they're not gonna be as adverse to investing in the right solution because they know they're going to be relying on it all year round. Whereas a part time RVer or a boater or any sort of nomad, they usually have a home base. So you've got a mobile internet connection that you're paying for full time there. Plus, depending upon your travel style, when you're out part timing, whether it's for short weekends, a few weeks at a time, maybe an entire season you take off for a few months at a time, well, you've got a different sort of challenge in that you have to find a solution that's going to work for that period of time and that you don't necessarily want to be having to pay for during the months that you're not using it. And you might not want to invest as much money into something that you're only using a few months out of the year. So it's a very different challenge, and especially a challenge for someone who might need a reliable and robust internet solution to do a lot of stuff, like working remotely while you're trying to travel full time. So that's why this topic is such a prickly one. Is we encounter, I mean, when we're dealing with a full-time RVer, we can really instruct them to really looking at investing in something that is going to be their solution while they're on the road and might need be the solution that lasts them for years. Part-time RVer, it's a very different approach. And we do have a full guide that you can follow along to go with this. It's linked at the top of every one of those cards, rvmobileinternet.com/part-time. So if you want to follow along with this or follow up with additional information. So let's go ahead and dig into some of the considerations here. So the first thing that you need to do when you're considering a part-time thing is, what are you going to be doing? What do you need to do online? If you're working remotely, it's a very different solution than if you're going more in vacation mode or if you're retired. Very different sorts of considerations when you're selecting a mobile internet setup. And Suzy has some direct experience with this. Is you also need to think about that trip with you. How much redundancy and solutions do you need in advance? So Suzy, what are some of the considerations you make when what gear and plans you're bringing along with you in the RV when you set off on one of your trips?
Well, one of the things that we look at is do we plan on having any work meetings? Do I need to have a video chat and the reliability of a video conferencing? Um, and also, will I be at a place that I can actually get online and do my work? Because sometimes, if it's a weekend, I'm not so concerned if I'm staying, if we're moving from destination to destination. If it's a weekend, we will make do with what we have. But if it's going to be a work day and it's a day we are planning on doing specific work things, we definitely work ahead. If we're dragging the kids along, I want to be able to make sure I can keep them entertained if it's going to pour in and be miserable. Some of like what happened last summer out in the Pacific Northwest. We did have our share of rainy days out there, and the ability to stream some movies. Whether I think we brought our dongles so we could connect our iPhone to the TV, so that way they could use their own data from their own cell plan also. So we think through what are the scenarios that we're going to need on this trip, and then I also plan where I'm going to stay a little bit to make sure the likelihood that I will have good service, or have resources nearby if I need to.
What sort of
Um,
tools do you use when you're looking ahead at what sort of internet connection you can expect at a location that
um,
you do?
I do usually, because we believe in redundancy, just like Merck. So we usually have multi carrier coverage. I do double check the maps if I'm going to be in the middle of nowhere, but if I'm near enough a city or a major population, I'm not. I check the maps, but I don't dig down into the details. That's only bitten me once. um, and But I also do look at the resources on the campground website. Uh, there are certain places that you're just not going to see anything at all, and I like to make sure I have a backup plan for emergency communications under those. Like if I'm at a national park campground in southeast Utah, there's not a lot of service there, and so then you need to know how you might at least get a hold of, like, or let loved ones know how to reach you. Um, and we learned that also from experience.
And
um,
Jen, before you guys are setting off on a trip, are there any considerations you guys make on what you might be bringing with you?
Our setup is pretty simple, so we pretty much bring everything that we have with us every time. So for me, it's really more of what's my schedule going to be while we're on the road? Am I going to have any work days? And then what are these? I pick places where I know I can stay connected. Whereas when we were, um, I make sure that I'm going to be somewhere that there is a signal if I'm going to have to work. So I do pay a little bit more attention to that now, actually, than I did when we were full time, because I wasn't working when we were full time. So it's actually something I pay more attention to now as a part timer than I did as a full timer.
yeah, I think that's true for us too. Although Andy
Yeah.
did more of the planning back when we were full time.
Yeah.
I just gave suggestions, and he's like, "Nope, nope. How about this one?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
So
I
you
do,
really,
yeah. So we do definitely pay a lot more attention to that than we did before. But again, it's also just kind of planning my travel either when I don't have to work or making sure that we're not going to be moving around on the days when I'm going to work.
right. So Jen will often check in with our team before she's heading out. She and Dee's will just say, hey, this weekend we found a great place to head out to. And her work days are usually the beginning of the week. All of our team works just part time, and we all trade off, and we built in a lot of flexibility in our team so we can all enjoy our travels as well. And so Jen will a lot of the times just pick her travels on the days where she's not normally scheduled to be on. But she lets us know she's going to be out of reach if she's going out somewhere where she doesn't expect she'll have much connectivity. Um, but uh, but yeah, so really you have to take into consideration what you need to be doing online to be able to find the right solution for you, and also take into consideration of where you're going. If you're going to populated areas where there's great cell signal, it's a very different situation than if you're going into very remote locations where there's not a lot of cell towers. Then you need to look at other solutions like Starlink, instead of looking at just cellular solutions. And then if you're doing a lot of travels throughout the year in a variety of locations, well, then you're probably going to want some redundancy in your setup so that you have your bases covered. Let's go ahead and go to our next slide. Flexibility. I did my yoga this morning. Did you? Flexibility is key, not just for your body, but also in your
Yeah.
approach to your mobile internet solution and being adaptable. With mobile internet, if you're dealing with wireless signals, if you're trying to depend upon an RV park's Wi-Fi, provided free Wi-Fi, or your cellular, or even Starlink, if you go somewhere under trees, these can all be variable things. You can be working just fine online, and then you get to the evening when people are getting home from whatever exploring they're doing during the day, and they're now streaming Netflix and Hulu, that the network can go down. So you might find that in the evenings you don't have as great a connection. If you've got a webinar scheduled to have to present, that can become an issue. um, it might not make sense to carry a lot of different equipment if your needs are short term and frequent. So you might have less options than a full timer does. So you need to have a plan B. And I think, Suzy, you were sharing with us recently a time you got to a location where you thought you're going to have great cell signal, but you didn't. What did you guys
No.
do?
Well, the first thing we were like, "Oh, this will be great," and we headed down into the campground, and poof, it's crowded, and there's nothing, no signal whatsoever. So we turned around. Well, we climbed in the car, and then headed back into town. And we went with our hotspot, and we have a small travel antenna, and we showed up with those, and we made sure we had those handy to enhance whatever, because this was northern Colorado, and it was a smallish town, and there was a chance that it wasn't going to be what we thought it was going to be also. And so we wanted to maximize and not have to go back to get more gear also from the rig. um, so that was a fun day. So we were like, oh, we really have to get some work done, and there's nothing. So we used our most portable stuff to take with us, and we also parked ourselves in a little bar and had a beer too, because they
Free
had
Wi-Fi,
Wi-Fi.
free beer, right? right? No, not the free
Yeah,
version, but.
it worked out.
And Jen, I think you've
Yeah.
been to a couple locations where you thought you might be able to get online and weren't.
Mhm.
And how'd you guys handle that?
Yeah, usually we would just, depending on, what I needed to do online. There have been a couple times when we just left and completely went somewhere else, to a different, like one time I'm thinking of recently, the campground had nothing, so we ended up going to a Harvest Host because it was closer to town. We knew we could get a signal, or sometimes if it's just that I need to be on a conference call, I don't need to be online all day, but I just know that I need to be, connect for an hour or two. We might just drive and go to a restaurant or someplace like that where I can use Wi-Fi, try and connect that way.
Yeah, and I've seen you even
But
like do our team calls like from the front seat of your van while Dee's is
yep, I've
driving.
done that too. While these is driving, yeah.
And sometimes you'll just voice in and not do video in if you can't get
hmm
enough signal and
Yes,
connectivity.
I do remember that happened one time. Yeah, the signal was just too bad. So.
Yep. Yeah. So, but it's possible still to stay in touch. You just
hmm
the less options that you have on board to try in your RV, the more backup plans you're going to want to have in mind. So as you're driving into your campground, pay attention to what the signal might be like in the nearest town and know what you can get
hmm
onto. Look around. Are there libraries? Are there cafes that say free Wi-Fi that you can go to? If you get to the campground and you're just not able to get online enough to get done what you need to do, you might need to drive back in. You might need to hike up. Sometimes there might be that campground's down a little bit of a ravine, but there's some hills or a hiking trail. You might just need to hike up to the top of that mountain or the hill and get a better signal and do your work from up there with a picnic blanket. We've done that plenty of places. So have some redundancy and have some backup options in mind, and you'll be much better able to handle the variability of mobile internet on the road without having to have like a big expensive setup all the time.
Hmm.
All right, so let's talk about some of the options for using internet on the road. And the first is, of course, Wi-Fi sources. So this could include the free Wi-Fi that's advertised at your campground or marina. It could be going to a cafe, a brewery, a bar, a library, or something like that in your travels and using their free Wi-Fi setup. Oftentimes, however, and how many times have we been to an RV park and the free provided Wi-Fi was enough to work remotely and stream Netflix at the night? How often does that happen?
Very rarely.
Never, never
I,
happened for us.
Yeah.
I honestly don't know how often it happens anymore because we just don't check anymore. It's like we just have our own solution. Um,
Yeah.
we pretty much consider the Wi-Fi provided at a campground or marina to be a nice if it works, but we're not going to go in hoping, relying on it going to be our option online. So especially if you're going to places that don't provide Wi-Fi, like state parks, Army Corps of Engineer parks, and boondocking, you're not going to find free Wi-Fi out in those sorts of locations most of the time. You're really only going to have the provided Wi-Fi if you're in an RV park that offers it as part of their services and their amenities. And a lot of times they just have not set up enough backhaul or enough to share with everybody in the campground to do everything they want to do. They may even say specifically, hey, it's great for email, it's great for bringing up a web page and researching your next stop, but don't expect to stream Netflix on this connection. And please don't uh, stream Netflix.
Yeah.
So if you have higher demanding needs than just checking a few things online, don't plan around Wi-Fi being your primary solution. And if you are counting on going to cafes or libraries or Starbucks or things like that to get your Wi-Fi fix, keep in mind those could be loud environments. They may be crowded. They may not be ideal for getting work done unless you like working with a lot of sound around you. If you're trying to do a conference call, this may not be the sort of thing that you do in a public area. So, just considerations on if Wi-Fi and how much of a role it might play in your mobile internet setup. Next. Cellular data. Now, this is the way that I think all of us here kind of rely on. It is easily to get options from anything from a smartphone has. Oh, that's our cat, isn't she cute? Um, using your smartphone to get online. There's a lot you can do right on your smartphone, but you can also create a personal mobile hotspot right off of the smartphone and get other devices online like your laptops, your data plan probably has caps on it, though. We'll get into that when we talk about data plans. Then there's cellular and embedded tablets. So getting whatever your favorite brand, we have all Apple tablets here, iPads. We always buy the one with a cellular chip in it. It's a little more expensive, but that also gives us a navigation with GPS. But it also, we can add on a cellular data plan, usually pretty cheaply, that's unlimited use on the tablet, that then allows us to do a lot on the tablet. You can stream video right to this, and you put this close enough to your face, and it's kind of like having a big screen TV. This is what we do in our van all the time when we're traveling, is we just attach this over our bed, and this is how we'll stream TV before bedtime. And you can do video conferencing on these. You can get a Bluetooth keyboard, and you can use it just like a laptop. So there's a lot that you can do for cellular embedded tablets. So we highly recommend part-timers and almost any nomad to consider a cellular embedded tablet as part of their arsenal. And then there's mobile hotspot devices, which Suzy had shown hers there. I've got one here. I know Jen travels with one as well. These are basically like smartphones without the phone, basically. They receive a cellular signal, and you can put external antennas on some of them, like the one that Suzy had showed earlier, because they have antenna ports on the back side of them. And then they create their own Wi-Fi network that then you can use to get laptops and other devices online. You'll need a data plan that goes on these devices, and they are different from smartphone data plans. But they're a great option that are portable. They have batteries in them, so you can take them on a hike with you. If you're not getting good signal at your specific campsite, take it on a hike up the hill. Take it to the front of the campground. Take it to a different part of the campground. You might be able to get a better signal. In worst case, if you need to jump in the car, put this in your purse or your backpack, take it in town and see if you can get a better signal there. There's also more robust routers. I think you have a router there, Suzy, to show off. Oh, yeah, the new Peplink B1. Yeah, that's a new popular option.
Yep.
There are routers that you can have with cellular embedded modems right in them. So they're kind of like a hotspot on steroids. You can see it has external antennas. Those can be unattached and then attached to something on the roof of your RV or even a portable device. That big white box behind Suzy's head is an external antenna that was designed to go into routers that you can actually just put right like in a window of your RV without any installation needed. So these panel and style of antennas are a great option to go with routers without worrying about installation.
In fact, ours uses command strips to hold it in place. Woo! We do have a tech cabinet, and since we do some testing here in the house, we need to remove ours. But normally this would just stay in place. But if you don't want to damage your walls, command strips, look, they're the little Velcro ones. They're great. So.
Yep. If you have a fiberglass RV or an RV not made of metal, having the antenna inside of your RV or boat is great. It's almost as good as putting it on the roof if you don't want to go through an installation challenge, which is sometimes a concern with part-time RVing, is how much effort do you want to put into your setup? So there's a lot of antennas that are out there that, especially now, a lot of manufacturers are making these sort of more portable antennas that don't require a lot of installation effort. If you go to our Cellular Resources Center, you will find all of our content on using these sorts of devices, including antenna selection and data plans, which we'll go over in a minute. But that page there that is linked, the Cellular Resources page, is a collection of all of our content about using cellular data as an internet connection on the road. And you can dive deep. There's a lot of information there and a lot of options for using cellular on the road. But it is usually the cheapest and the easiest option. It's the equipment doesn't use a lot of power. It doesn't usually cost a lot of money. And there's a lot of stuff. Now, using a router like what Suzy was just showing with that new Peplink B1 series, that also allows you to bring in multiple solutions, because you can use, this has got Ethernet out. You can actually put an Ethernet connection right into that and have multiple options for redundancy right in the same unit, including like Starlink options, which we'll get into in a moment. And let's go talk about cellular data plans. Now, the data plans that all of us are using, we're not going to tease you with them because most of us have sweet, unlimited, grandfathered in data plans because, well, we've been tracking this for a decade and we've snagged them. If you're just coming to this new, you're going to need to choose from the data plans that are currently out there on the market. And the plans do vary for smartphones versus hotspots versus tablets and routers. And so we do have a guide there, the top data plan picks guide at plan picks. That one is kept updated all the time with all of our current top data plan picks. Now, in our part-timers guide for our members, we actually curate a list of data plans that we consider to be flexible. These are plans that are maybe prepaid or from third-party vendors where there's not a lot of startup costs and they're easy to quit or pause when you're not traveling. So if you're one of our members, follow up in our part-timers guide to see what those data plans are that we're currently recommending. We're not going to go focused in on specific data plans on this video because we want it evergreen. We want someone watching this tomorrow to actually be able to get some ideas. We will be going over what Suzy and Jen's setups are, so you can just see how varied they are. All right, signal enhancing gear. We did kind of cover that with some of the options. Obviously, with cellular, signals is imperative. The stronger signal you have, likely the better performance you're going to have. And just remember that the bars on your device aren't necessarily going to be indicative of what the speeds are you'll get, but it is indicative of the reliability of the connection that you'll get. There are so many ways to go about getting a better signal. Everything from taking your hotspot outside of the RV and putting it on a picnic table to having an external antenna, like some of those ones that Suzy showed, to having cellular boosters, which are expensive and don't necessarily solve the problem with data. We have an entire guide going over all the things that impact performance that might help you hone in on what your cellular signal options are. Now, Jen, you guys travel in a van, which has metal, which blocks signal, but you guys don't use any external antennas, really, do you?
We're not right now. Previously we did have the Netgear MIMO antenna that we used with a hotspot, but when we switched hotspots, we went to a hotspot that didn't have an antenna port, so we can't use that anymore. That is definitely something I miss, because that MIMO antenna was cheap and easy to bring along, even in a small RV like our van, and very effective. I cannot tell you how many times that thing really saved us. But yeah, so right now we don't have one.
Ooh.
We might need to have Jen reconsider her setup before she sets out on this longer trip.
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting to see, because our trips have been so short. And yeah, well, I'll get to that when we talk about my setup. But if we're going to start traveling more like we're planning on, my setup may change next year. So.
And Suzy, you guys carry usually those two different antennas for your gear.
Yes.
Do you guys carry a booster at all with your setup?
We've never used a booster. I see them a lot on various, clearly people who do a lot of tent camping around here, but we just stick with the antenna. I think it's really saved our butts. And you can put it in different windows if you need to find where it's best, because it's so small. Yeah, love this guy.
A great little antenna. I think they're like $55 these days for that. And
yes.
Those work with things with 2 antenna ports only. If you're going with a 5G router, those are typically going to need 4 antenna ports. So not a great option for that, but there are other great options on the market for it. But yeah, if you want to dive into cellular data performance, you want to dive into what our current top picks for cellular antennas and boosters, if you're considering them, that performance guide will kind of link you in to all of our content on this topic. All right, satellite. Starlink has changed the game for satellite. It used to be satellite was very difficult, even for full-timers, to set up. A big investment and having a lot of setup at each location. For part-timers, it's even more difficult because you used to not be able to, it was a lot of equipment to lug around and set up. And then what are you going to do when you're not traveling? Can the plan be suspended? Starlink has changed everything. If you're not familiar with Starlink, it is a low Earth orbit satellite technology being launched by SpaceX, Elon Musk's company. We have probably about 500 videos we've put out on it just this week. Things are constantly changing. Seems like I have produced so many Starlink videos recently that Chris has been recording. In fact, we're tracking another change potentially happening right now as we're broadcasting this.
Yes.
But Starlink is wonderful. So you buy a dish from them. Currently, the standard dish is $499, and then you can get a data plan with them. The one for mobility is currently $150 a month, and that allows you to use Starlink anywhere on your home continent. So in the US, Canada, Mexico, Caribbean, great option. If you have Starlink residential service, you can even take that on the road and just update your service address at each stop and keep your same plan. If you don't want to update your address at each stop, you can switch temporarily to the mobile plan and then switch back to your residential plan when you get back home. So it's a very flexible option. You can cancel service, you can pause service on the mobile plan. So it's a very flexible option, but a lot of people, it is a big upfront investment, usually at $500 dish, and $150 a month might be more expensive than what you think you need. There are downsides to Starlink, like it uses a lot of power. So if you're trying to do boondocking or off-grid camping, that is a consideration because you might not have the most robust solar and battery setup on a part-time rig. It also doesn't like trees. So if you like to camp underneath trees, you might need to consider other options than Starlink. We personally have not activated our Starlink in months because cellular works so well for us. And neither of you guys travel with Starlink, correct? Any
Nope.
temptation?
We thought about it when we knew that the mini was coming, but it doesn't look like we don't want to spend a lot every month because we're not relying on it here at home. And so I didn't want to invest in a dish and all of that. So it's not likely to be in our future unless something changes. And it's Starlink, so it might change.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
could be reconsidering everything tomorrow when something new comes out. That's the
Yeah.
thing with Starlink is they're constantly changing stuff. And yeah, the new mini dish is very promising. It uses lower power. It's smaller. It was supposed to be cheaper, but it's actually more expensive here in the U.S. right now, today, as of this broadcast. And the data plans right now, well, as of this afternoon, it was you could only add it onto residential service, and it's $30 a month added onto your service, a second plan. It only gives you 50 gigabytes of data a month. We're hoping that gets better over time. We're seeing some evidence that maybe it is already changing. We'll see. We're tracking that right now. Yeah, so stay tuned with Starlink. We were hoping the mini would be a much better solution, especially for part-time RVers to consider. But satellite communicators, though, are an interesting option. So Suzy and Andy, they travel with a Zoleo
Yes, and I
satellite
don't have
communicator.
it right next to me.
But basically, these are little handheld devices that connect to a satellite connection and allow you to at least get some minimal data. What are some of the things that you can do with your satellite communicator when you guys are off grid?
So we use it when we're very far off grid, and one of the nice things is we can get weather reports. So we've taken it river rafting and multi-day trips, and so now we can get current weather updates to know where we are. Actually, how safe is it to get on the river? Is there risk of flash flood? Is it going to be really blazing hot or cold? And plus the ability to send messages to family. It actually family members have to download an app to get the message. But that's an easy thing to set up, and then they can communicate directly with us. And we wish we'd have had it sooner. Honestly, we were camping in a national park, and we had an emergency, and they called the campground host to try and track us down because we had a family member hospitalized. But the Zoleo, if we'd had that then, they could have easily reached us. We could check in on our dogs with a dog sitter. It was really a nice, easy way, and we can pause it when we don't need it. So it goes down to a $4 fee when we're not using it, and then we activate it for more messages, and we also take it hiking and so on. So that comes with us always.
And the whole world of satellite communication is changing. I mean, already on Apple 14 and above devices, you get SOS emergency services included for free. So if you do have an emergency while you're out of cell signal, you can at least reach Apple's SOS service. And in their next OS, which should come out this fall, They'll allow text messaging and iMessage and SMS messaging. So you'll actually be able to text people just like normal. You'll have to hold your phone up and wait for a connection. It's not going to be immediate, but you're going to have some connectivity out in the middle of nowhere. And of course, T-Mobile and Starlink have teamed up, and they are currently launching satellites as we speak that will enable cellular signals to be broadcast down to any T-Mobile phone. That should be enabled by the end of the year. Now, this will be text messaging only to start with. It will not be broadband internet anytime soon, but great options for off-grid technology. Also, AT&T and T-Mobile, AT&T and Verizon have partnered with AST Mobile, Space Mobile, another launching low Earth orbit satellite constellation focused on cellular connectivity from space. So they'll also be bringing out something in the years to come. So exciting stuff coming for having really no dead zones for basic connectivity. And that might be all you need if you're going off grid part-time. If you're not working remotely or you just need to keep in touch with people, these options are going to be life-changing, I think, for a lot of us. So this is another interesting option. And Jen, I'm going to let you talk about this one because this is one that you guys don't do this, and I know the McNabs don't either, but talk about how you might be able to construct a mobile internet option that you also use at your fixed location.
Yeah, if you're, and this will just kind of be, this will work for some people and not work for others. But if you are somebody that's traveling part-time, but going to be traveling a lot and maybe even on the road more than you're at home, it may be worthwhile to just, instead of having a home internet setup and a mobile setup, to just build your mobile setup, put all your money in that, and then just use that when you're at home. If you have some data plans, some cellular plans that you're using while you're traveling, if you can get a signal on those plans when you're at home, then just have all your money go into that mobile setup, and you can use that even while you're at home. And that way, you're not maintaining two different setups. You just have the one.
Right. So using like a mobile router, like some of those Peplink options that are out there, those are designed usually for like small home offices size sort of locations, and use that in your RV or boat, and then take it out of the RV or boat and then put it in your house. And maybe you need to set up an access point or two around the house to distribute the signal further, but it can still be the central hub. You might need an external antenna if you have bad cell signal inside. Maybe you're using Starlink at home, could be a great option. You use it at home, and then you just use it portably when you're on the road. The consideration is, of course, if you need an internet connection at home while you're away, maybe you have a pet sitter or a home sitter or kids that stay at home, or you just want to be able to remote in, so you're going to want some sort of internet connection at the house too. So, but this is an option that works for a lot of people, is having a setup that they move from their RV to their house and back and forth. All right, Jen, go ahead and describe what your complex mobile internet setup here is that you use to keep connected.
Yes. So we have a very basic setup. Again, when we travel full time, we weren't working, and so we did not have a complex setup back then. Now we have the house, we have fiber internet at home, and we've only been taking short trips. So our setup is just sweet, real short and sweet. On my cell phone, I can get dual SIMs. So I have 2 cell phone plans on my phone. One's on T-Mobile, and then one is on Visible, which is on Verizon's network. Both of those plans have hotspot options. So if I want to connect that way, and one of those 2 carriers has a good signal, I can just use the hotspot. Then we also have an AT&T data plan that we have in a hotspot. So that way I have, all 3 carriers coverage. And so pretty much anywhere I go, I can find some sort of signal, unless we're just really out in the middle of nowhere. And as I mentioned earlier, we did previously have our data plan and hotspot were with Verizon, and the hotspot did have antenna ports. So we did use that Netgear MIMO antenna, and it was an absolute lifesaver in some situations. But when we switched to using this AT&T plan, the hotspot that made the most sense, unfortunately, did not have those antenna ports. So that is all we're using right now. We've really been doing shorter trips. I think the longest trip we've done in the past year has only been 2 weeks, but we are planning some longer, more extended travel for later this year and next year. So more than likely my setup is going to change. And I think that is one thing when you're traveling part-time, is you've got to kind of think about it every time you go out, because if your last trip was 3 months ago, something may have changed in the world. There may be a better plan that you can get on than what you had before, or there may be some new equipment. So it's definitely something that's going to be dynamic, I think, for us. Like the more we travel, the more I think we're probably going to have to add something. This has worked very well for us, just doing kind of sporadic travel. But I'm only working part time, and I've been able to kind of be flexible with my days and my travel and kind of build around that. So this has worked fine for us, but we'll
And
see.
do you ever adjust your data plans? Like, so I know you have a retired AT&T plan, but your T-Mobile and your
Yeah,
Visible plan, like if you get somewhere, do you keep like just the basic Visible plan on your phone right now?
I have the Visible Plus
The
actually,
Plus, okay.
and I did it when they were running one of their promos. I don't remember
Hmm.
what it is now. I think it was like the $35 a month or something like
Right.
that.
But
So
you
I
do
got
have
that,
the
and then
option. So that one is capped at 5 megabit per second for your hotspot data. So, one of the things that you can do as a part timer is keep your data plans on your smartphones for what you need when you're home based, where you probably don't need as
mhm,
much hotspot data. But when you're going out on a trip, that's when you would upgrade temporarily to whatever the premium plan is with your carrier that provides gobbles of hotspot data.
right.
Like in case with Visible, if you go to their current Visible Plus plan, it offers 10 megabit per second speeds on mobile hotspot. You
Mhm.
can change up to that plan temporarily, and then when you get back home, go back to your more basic plan where you don't need as much of the features.
Yeah.
So that's one of the strategies with a
Yeah.
when it's set
And
up.
I did do that previously when I was on Verizon plan, direct with Verizon. I was on a prepaid plan. And yeah, I would just keep it real low data when we were at home. And then we went on the road, I would bump it back up and then move it back and forth. I haven't really had to do that other than just adding the T-Mobile plan several months ago now, I guess. But so yeah, I definitely have looked at just kind of changing it on the fly. And that is the advantage to like a prepaid plan, is that you can just kind of change it back and forth like that.
Oh,
The only
even on
risk would be is if you're on like an older plan that's been retired
right.
or promotional pricing, then you might not be able to get that back if you switch around a
Right.
lot.
But even on a lot of postpaid plans, if you have the carrier's current plans, it's really
Mm-hmm.
easy to switch between their various levels of plans. We do
Mm-hmm.
that all the time with we have AT&T business plans on our smartphones as our primary plan, and like we have our family members on that plan. So when my mom's doing international travel, I bump her up to the highest level, which gives her international coverage in several countries, and then we bump her back down when she's back home. So
Mm-hmm.
these are things that you can do. Let's go ahead and let Suzy talk about her setup. Hers is a little more complex.
Yeah. I blame my children for the complexity, but it's also the redundancy that we really do. We also use the AT&T hotspot plan, but we put ours in that router. So we put it in the router, the SIM card, and we can use it that way, and that gives us it is unlimited. And then we rely on all of our family's smartphone plans on the T-Mobile. We encourage kids to stream on their own plans if they're going to dive through the data, or if they. But when it comes to movie night and whatever, then we're using the router and the data plans that we put in the router. Um, as part of that redundancy, we have this iPad that we've had a cellular uh, plan of about a gigabyte. I think we just maintain it, so that way when we need more data, we can basically up that plan, and we just kind of keep that going. Uh, so I try and keep the monthly costs lower, because I'd rather spend my money on the travel side of it. And as we all know, storage of your RV or motorhome is very expensive. You don't want to have to do that. But the advantage of some of the things that we do, like the iPad, is that when my husband travels, say, to visit his family flying, he's got something he can take with him. It's small, it's lightweight, and it's connected. Currently, we're using the T-Mobile home internet, but if you've been watching the news, that is likely to go away. And so we are actively looking at what we're going to do to replace that, because that has been a really sweet setup. So we'll see. And I've mentioned the satellite communicator. It's great. And if we were to run out of say we're using the router and we have terrible AT&T signal, we may, and especially if we're not using T-Mobile, we may get a prepaid SIM to stick in the router to give us some additional data. And of
Yeah.
course, we
And
drag our
that's
antennas.
then you guys travel with like blank SIM cards so that you can activate plans as needed remotely?
Yes, that was a small investment we made. So we've got them on hand. Somewhere I found one on the floor. Oh, here it is. Um, uh, so it's ready to be used when we need it, and it's easy to activate. And
That's
so
a
that
great tip for flexibility is having that option right on board. So if you get someplace and you say, "Oh, my neighbor says AT&T is working here," well then guess what? You can call AT&T. You've got the SIM card already ready. You can activate a plan right there and have it working as long as you have an AT&T device that can run it. Um, so that's a great option. Is spend that
yeah,
10 bucks to have those blank SIM cards around.
yeah, and they don't go away until you use them. So
Exactly.
they keep their value.
All right, so part-time travel with an RV, totally possible, but different sorts of considerations. Make sure you understand your needs, research your options, know your travel style. And I think Jen mentioned this earlier, is this stuff is changing all the time. And that means that if you like disconnect your data planes at the end of your trip, the next time you go back out, things might have changed. You're going to need to research what is currently your options. So don't consider a part-time setup to be a one and done sort of situation with your research and investment. It is something that you will need to look at before each trip. It might be even a completely different setup depending upon what your trip is, how long it's going to be, and what you need to accomplish. Um, we do offer a lot of resources over at the Mobile Internet Resource Center. We offer a lot of free content like this Merc Live series. Um, but if you need to go deeper with our content, maybe you want access to those curated data plans that we talked about earlier for flexibility, you want to go learn more about antennas and what devices to select, you want to ask our team interactively what's best for your unique situation. That's what our membership is for. That's what makes all of this possible. We don't do advertising, sponsorships. We're not affiliate driven. And we currently do have a sale going on our premium membership, our MIA Plus. That's Mobile Internet Aficionados. If you join by the end of this month, so you just have 5 days left to do that, if you're watching this live, $97 per year. We dropped it back to what our pricing was last year temporarily. It's our summer sale. You can join and get access to all of our content, including our mobile internet video course, which will give you a solid foundation on understanding all of this. If you're watching this later as an archive and you're interested in joining, we do offer our Merc Live viewers a $10 discount off of the MIA Plus. So you can't use that on the $97 special. We're already giving that away. Normally it's $129, but you can save $10 if you use Merc Live at checkout. Now we're going to turn this over. I think we have a little bit of time to take some questions. You have some questions queued up?
Yeah, we've had 80 people watching.
Wow, 80 people.
A whole bunch
That's
of
amazing.
questions here. So
okay, we're only going to be able to field a couple, so pick a couple good ones out, and we'll try to address those.
Okay. So.
If you do have more questions, we do these webinars frequently for our members and our forums as well. So if getting interactive guidance is something that you desire, we're not able to get around to your questions in the couple minutes we have left here, do consider becoming a member and come join us. We're happy to help you over there.
So Johnny Lightning is wondering about T-Mobile home internet on the road, and that's a cue to talk about all the changes coming.
Yeah, so as was mentioned in there, when Suzy is currently using it in her setup, it has worked up until nowish. T-Mobile has always had terms that their home internet solution, which is $50 or $60 a month, and you have to use it on their gateway device, which is the white device behind Suzy's head over there. It was for fixed locations only where T-Mobile has excess 5G capacity to offer the service, and they know you have a good signal. However, they have never enforced those terms. They, however, announced back in April that they are launching a new version of the plan called Away, all capitals, for $160 a month, specifically meant for RVers and nomads and campers. And then they will be doing address validation, where you will be, if you are not using your T-Mobile home internet service at your registered service address, you will have to go and verify your address or move it to an address that is in their system for that is available and has excess capacity. If you're not, you're going to need to move to a different data plan. they'll try to steer you to the away plan. We would encourage you to go look at your alternative plans. Our video that we did in May was on specific alternatives to T-Mobile home internet. So go look at our last Merc Live, where we went over a whole bunch of options that are alternatives to T-Mobile home internet.
So Ken is asking about any guidance on finding info on upload speeds before a trip. He says most campsite reference sources only mention download speed.
Yeah, so a lot of people only are really concerned with, can I get my Netflix and things like that. So you're going to want to go look at crowdsourced coverage map, sort of. So there's Coverage Map by Stetson. He's doing some of that. There's, what's the other ones? I know they've come and gone. If you go to our travel planning guide, which is at rvmobileinternet.com/travel planning, we have a list of all of the ways to look at your signal in advance of getting there. And some of those crowdsourced ones, they do take readings of upload speed, but it is hit or miss because so much is depending upon the transmitter inside your cellular device. And it can also be time of day, your data plant, the cell towers that you are connected to. So we advise not relying totally on crowdsourced information because you don't know what sort of equipment they have. Are they using a booster? Are they using antennas? And all of those things can help give you better upload capacity. So it's really important that you understand all of the variables that can impact your cellular data performance. So go look at that performance guide that we went over in the cellular signal enhancing part of this presentation.
We've got a question about what do you guys recommend for RVing in Alaska for a 1-week trip?
Take a vacation. T-Mobile is not great. T-Mobile is not great up there. If you're sticking to popular areas, AT&T tends to be the best solution. So take an AT&T option with you up there. It's probably going to be your best solution. Jen, you were just in the Alaska guide. Any other recommendations?
Well, there's a local provider there that does some prepaid plans that you could look into. I think it was GCI, I think the name of it. But yeah, we
for a week that might be more effort than it's worth. But AT&T has been the longtime carrier, U.S. carrier that covers Alaska the best. T-Mobile, they're always roaming onto GCI. And Verizon has been rolling out coverage up there, but AT&T has the best coverage map of the U.S. nationwide carriers. But mostly focus on Alaska.
We've had several people actually ask about Calyx Institute as an alternative to T-Mobile home internet. They're wondering what's up with Calyx, and does Calyx throttle video, or some of the other questions that have popped through.
Right. So the Calyx Institute is a nonprofit that had been with Sprint, and then there were some old terms of service in there in which Sprint had to provide unlimited data plans for a low cost to nonprofits. That terms was picked up when T-Mobile bought Sprint, and Calyx is one of those nonprofits that was formed and was able to offer these plans to the public. You don't have to be income qualified. There's no special thing. So basically you join the Calyx Institute for $750 a year. They send you a mobile hotspot device, not this one, but it's the T-Mobile one. And then you get unlimited data for a year. And not accounting for the cost of the hotspot device, it works out to about $43 a month. It is a great option. You do have to use the plan on the provided hotspot device. You cannot move the SIM card to your own device. And we do have multiple reports that video was throttled to 2.5 megabit per second, which is good for about HD resolution. Is it a great option? It is absolutely a great option if you're okay with those caveats. Another alternative to them that a lot of people are considering is if you're a member of the Family Motor Coach Association, the FMCA. They have a similar plan for their members that is $59.99 per month with a $39 device rental fee. We are also getting reports that plan is having some video throttling with that as well. So if you're looking for 4K video, then those plans are probably not going to be suitable for your needs. But if you're okay with HD video, then they can be great.
We have a question from Tammy wondering about taking AT&T phone SIM cards and putting them in hotspots while traveling.
No, AT&T smartphone SIM cards are designed and only authorized for use in smartphones. If you want to use a hotspot device, you want to buy a data-only a data plan, which our top data plan picks guide that we referenced earlier in this video goes over all the options there that we currently recommend.
Doug is wondering about, is PepWave Speed Fusion worth the cost and investing in to avoid to combine Starlink and Cellular with the PepWave router.
It is a very popular option that our members are choosing. We have a lot of guidance over at the Mobile Internet Resource Center in our members section. We have an entire PepLink resource center that we've built out with our partners at Mobile Must Have. And we have a guide specifically to using Speed Fusion, when it makes sense and when it doesn't. So if you're one of our members, head on over there, check out our PepLink resource center for more information on that. And we've done webinars, and we also do 2 webinars a month on PepLink equipment for our members. And we do have Mobile Must Have also provides tech support to our members for free in our forums.
There's a question. Hello, TravelFi unit. Are they useful for travelers?
So TravelFi, HomeFi, there's a whole bunch of other ones that are out there. What these are is a router that is provided by this third-party reseller that then has an eSIM support that then they claim that you can use that will pick up the best signal at each location. Doesn't quite work that way. You have to go and select the carrier that you want to use at each location. They can be a great option. The downside is that the routers that they provide are typically pretty low end. They're going to be only focused on cellular. They're usually lower end modems that aren't going to get the best coverage. Some of the modems don't even cover some of the key frequency bands of the carriers they claim to support. They are third-party providers, which means that they are not the carrier themselves. But if they work for you, we consider them great for basic needs, and they are very flexible as well that you can consider.
Question with the Netgear MIMO antenna and any experience with an external antenna in the same hotspot. I'm wondering if they made an external antenna a booster compared to the Netgear MIMO antennas. How I read that.
I'm not sure. Let's skip that one.
Okay. And then we're almost caught up. Dual SIM phones sound interesting. Do both SIMs work simultaneously? Is it one phone number for both SIMs?
No. So each SIM card will have its own phone number, and the phone will be listening for phone calls coming in from both SIM cards, but you only are using one data plan at a time.
And I think that we might be caught up.
All right.
And so, yeah, I think we are caught up here.
All right. Well, thank you for joining in for our Merck Live series. We are doing one of these about every 6 to 8 weeks. We pick an interesting topic. Something might be timely, it might be something that we get a lot of questions on, and then they become part of our content over at the Mobile Internet Resource Center. Go ahead and put up the card about the membership. All of our content, including these free Merck Series Lives, are made possible by our membership. The advertising dollars that we get off our YouTube channel is barely enough to buy our team a beer. YouTube does not pay a lot of money out of there. So if you've enjoyed this and you don't want to become a member, please do use that super chat feature or the super thanks or whatever. Leave us a thank you. That helps our team know that this content is appreciated. It keeps us inspired to keep going. Leave comments. Give us a thumbs up. All this stuff helps YouTube know that this content is appreciated and helps others find it. If this sort of content is what you appreciate, you want to go further with our content, do consider becoming a member. That is what makes this all possible, and that is where we put a lot of our effort. Our members get heads up. They get alerts when we think things are coming. Long before we get a video out on this YouTube channel, our members are usually well in the know of what is going on in the industry because they're the first to know when we find out about it. They get newsletters, they get interactive guidance in our forums and webinars, and instead of us taking affiliate kickbacks, they get those potential kickbacks passed on to them as additional discounts. So if you're considering a more expensive setup and investment in your mobile internet setup, you can save more money than the cost of membership with some of our vendor discounts. So until our next Merck Live, thank you for joining us, Suzy and Jen. It's great to have the team here and getting to introduce you guys to more of our audience. We will see you next time. And until then, may the bandwidth be with you.